A great deal of fighting has taken place. In chapter 11, it is said that Joshua waged war a long time with these kings. Going by Caleb's self-description in chapter 14, who says he was 40 years old when Moses sent him to spy out the land, and now he is 85, if we subtract 40 years for wilderness wandering, this implies the conquest of Canaan has taken 5 years to this point. Now, at the beginning of chapter 13, we are told that Joshua is old. The Lord addresses him with that same statement and adds the fact that much of the task of cleansing the land remains to be finished. The reality is that Joshua will not be able to complete this task. So, in verse 6, the Lord declares that I myself will drive them out. But Joshua can still fulfill a major part of the ministry he has been given, which he has taken over from Moses, as this chapter will reaffirm. As the Lord goes on to say in verse 6 and then 7, divide up the land as an inheritance to the 9.5 tribes of Israel. This chapter, although it might be a tedious list of obscure places, is in fact very important. There have been a few great moments in this book, such as crossing the Jordan, circumcising the males, worshipping the Lord and reading the law, and no longer needing manna. But the really big moment comes when the land is finally theirs, that is, when it gets divided up between the tribes. This is where they actually inherit the promised land. The first major point to note is that God is the landlord. His former tenants are in the process of being evicted. Now God hands over the keys, as it were, to new tenants. The second point is that Joshua is the successor to Moses. That is, he continues and completes Moses' mission. But that is all. He does not pass on this ministry to someone else. He does not start some new dynasty which rules Israel and controls the land. Joshua has done the fighting and won the territory. Now he must make sure to divide it all up and give it all away. There will be no new Joshua after him. His part is done. The third point is that the land belongs to these tribes. This is what this chapter enshrines. In the centuries to come, kings will steal portions of this land. Ahab stealing Naboth's vineyard is a good example. In Ezekiel's vision of the new temple, in chapter 45, verses 8 and 9, the Lord tells the future princes of Israel that they must no longer oppress his people and evict them from their land. Verse 8 specifically says, they shall let the house of Israel have their land according to their tribes. And that is what we have here in chapter 13. So God is the true landlord of the land and has given it to his people. The ideal is, therefore, that no one in Israel can take it away from them, and that no enemies remain in the land to disturb them. Unfortunately, on both counts, this ideal vision fails. Chapter 14 shows that the first tribe to get any inheritance on the western side of Jordan was Judah, the tribe which was to remain longest in the land, after the northern tribes were exiled by Assyria. But Caleb, to whom the first portion goes in fulfillment of the book of Numbers, is not actually an Israelite, but a Kenizzite, a relative of Edom descended from Esau. He declares in verse 8 that he wholeheartedly followed the Lord, then repeats that statement as a quote from Moses to him in the next verse. His name in Hebrew means dog, which can be used negatively or positively in the Bible. Positively, it can refer to qualities of faithfulness, as it surely does here. The point being that this foreigner, like Rahab, glued themselves through faith to the God of Israel and did not melt with fear or lose confidence in him when the true Israelites did. Caleb has stayed alive a long time, fighting brutal wars in his 80s with no loss of resolve or energy. His confidence in God and his everlasting word is no less strong. So he is accordingly rewarded with the territory promised him, and in fact, As we shall see when we come to the book of Judges, the first judge comes from his family line. Chapter 14 concludes, picking up from the end of chapter 11, that the land had rest from war.